I'm going to be breaking down the 3 different types of hikers, what kind of gear they carry, and what kind of gear you might want to carry based on where you think you fit in best. This is going to include the beginner, the weekend warrior, and then of course the ultralight thru hiker. Between these 3 different setups, hopefully you get enough of an idea of the variety of gear you can get. For the beginners, we're going to be focusing on more budget conscious gear, things that you might be able to borrow or find at a secondhand store. We're going to be covering the weekend warrior. You can think of this person as 1 to 3 night backpacker every month or so, maybe every weekend. So you might want to invest in lighter gear or something that will last you much longer. And then for the ultralight thru hiker, we're going to be purely focusing on efficiency and weight. So between those 2, these items tend to be a little bit more expensive, but I mix and match all of these items together to create what I prefer to be my best backpacking setup. So hopefully this just gives you a good idea of where all of that goes. I like to think about this as a video game. I get to build my character any way I want. So first we're going to be covering the backpack. I shared with you all what kind of backpack I used in my last video, but that is by no means a very common beginner's backpack. In fact, I actually started off with an Osprey Aura 65 liter. So similarly for beginners, I would probably recommend the Osprey Rook 65. It's around $180, so a little bit more affordable. It's roomy and extremely beginner-friendly suspension, so it's not going to pain your back as much. I noticed with all Osprey bags, they have a really nice netting on the back that kind of separates your back from the frame itself, allowing airflow between you and the bag, which is kind of a big deal, especially if you're not used to having a big pack on you. For the weekend warrior, I would probably suggest something like the Gregory Paragon 58 liter. This is around $260. It's a very durable pack and it has an adjustable torso length, which is one of the big selling points. A lot of people complain that the hips don't actually fit where their hips are. And then finally, for the ultralight hiker, I would probably recommend, and you'll see this all over the place, a ULA Circuit, a Z-Pax, or a Hyperlight. And the reason why is to be a dry bag. It operates like a dry bag. It allows you some flexibility with having a duck pack or something that might be rain resistant if you're in an area that tends to be on and off with rain, which is pretty much all alpine regions. Of course, the other piece of this puzzle is the ultralight backpacks are around only 41 ounces. They're extremely customizable, so you can actually go to these outfitters and have them put specific netting for certain pockets, things like that. So those packs range from $350 to $400 depending on what you're looking for. So just keep that in mind when you are taking a look at packs. And then we have our tent. For the beginners, I would suggest the REI Passage 2. It's around $160. It's double wall, super easy to set up, and it has a pretty good amount of space. It's pretty typical that you would get a 2-person tent. Even if it's just you going solo, you want the extra room. For a weekend warrior, I'd probably suggest the Big Agnes Copper Spur HV UL2. This tent is not cheap. Tents in general are just not very cheap. This tent is around $550 and it's extremely lightweight and a freestanding tent, so you actually don't need to put any stakes in the ground. The benefit of getting the Big Agnes tent is this one could kind of move into the ultralight category. It's a really popular tent for thru hikers, regardless of it being just slightly heavier. There are some reasons why people take the Big Agnes instead of opting for the most popular thru hiking tent, which is definitely the Z-Pax Duplex. I actually don't own this tent myself. The big appeal for it is there are no poles. All you have to do is carry your trekking poles, which you'll already be hiking with, and you can pitch it using them, which means that it's adjustable and it's basically just a very large tarp. Kind of the downside to this tent is you're looking at about a $700 investment. So the less material that you get, essentially, the more expensive these items will get. You'll probably see as a theme. The Z-Pax tent is also made of Dyneema composite, the same thing as the Hyperlight backpack, so it's completely waterproof. And then for sleeping bags, we have our Kelty Cosmic Down 20 for the beginners. This is around $180. It's a budget down sleeping bag, so it packs very small. It's pretty warm, but a little bit bulkier than your common backpacking sleeping bags. For a weekend warrior, and a bag that I truly love and had for a very long time is the REI Magma. This is an ultralight bag. It's in the $350 to $400 range, so it's definitely pricier, but it is a down bag, packs down extremely small, maybe about this large. Very light, very easy to compress down. I never had issues with it. For an ultralight hiker, you'll probably hear this a lot, the word quilt. The Enlightened Equipment Revelation Quilt. It's also around $300+. It's ultra light and very customizable. So kind of a trend with these ultralight hikers is being able to customize your setup. For a quilt, it's basically a blanket that folds and you have kind of straps. So unlike a mummy sleeping bag where you're kind of tied in, you have a little bit more freedom with your legs to move. It operates with the same thermal ratings that a traditional down would. So it's giving you just a little bit more in terms of options for sleeping. All right, and then sleeping pads. So for sleeping pads, a beginner almost always would go with a Thermarest Z Lite. These are around $60, extremely budget pad. I'd say decent comfort. I don't love them, but they do the trick. They're much better than sleeping on the ground. And the biggest advantage with these is that you can just kind of whip them out and use it as a seat throughout the day, since they usually sit like an accordion on top of your backpack. Next, for a weekend warrior, and what I personally use is the Big Agnes Rapide SL. This is about $160, and the warmth to weight really stands out with this one. It's packs down small, it's a blow-up pad, so it's extremely comfortable. It raises you off the ground like this much, so you have lots of room between you and the dirt, and truly one of the best sleeping pads I've ever owned. And then of course, if you're ultra light and you're going all the way, for $230 you can buy the Neo Air Uber Light. The only difference between this and the one I just talked about is the weight. This pad is around 8.8 ounces, so very light. Next, for a headlamp or a flashlight, you kind of can standardize this one with a black diamond between a beginner or a weekend warrior. Diamond headlights operate really well. They're battery powered, so you don't have to plug them in and worry about it dying on you. They're also waterproof and have adjustable light settings. But for an ultralight hiker, you might be more interested in a night core. These are around $40, so not too far off from the black diamond. What's funny about these is they look like they have this just string that wraps around your head. So again, less ounces. We're just looking for things that have less material. Next is our trekking poles. For a beginner, 100% just go to Costco and get the Cascades. They are $50. They're solid and have cork handles, which I prefer just because your hand actually molds to the cork a little bit better. That's kind of it. But the Cascade poles I used for my first 3 through hikes. So I would say they work perfectly fine for being such a budget pole. There's no reason to go out and buy yourself a black diamond unless you're really caring about the weight or the carbon fiber. For an ultralight hiker, I typically see black diamonds, but occasionally you'll see something really fancy like Gossamer Gear LT5s. These are like $200 and they're made of purely carbon fiber, and again, only weigh 10.6 ounces per pair. So wait. Next is going to be our stove. So for a beginner stove, I 100% would just start out with the MSR Pocket Rocket. This is pretty typical. It's around $50. It's reliable. It screws onto a canister stove and is very simple. All you need is a lighter or a match. For a weekend warrior, I've seen a lot of people use the Jetboil Flash. These are around $130, so definitely more of an investment. The biggest selling point for the Jetboil is it basically saves gas. It boils water a lot faster than your traditional stove would, so it's all insulated and has its own pot that comes with the setup. So you kind of get a 2-in-1 in that sense. It is a little bit heavier, but people find that you not having to waste gas all the time and constantly buy new canisters is a good trade-off. And for an ultralight, most people would just use the MSR Pocket Rocket or no stove at all. For fuel, no matter who you are, you're probably gonna be using an isobutane canister. These are about this big and they sell them at REI and some grocery stores, especially in trail towns. If you're going ultralight, just don't bring gas and a stove, maybe cooled soap. And now for our cook sets. So I would probably start out with the Sea to Summit Alpha set. It's only $15. It comes with a pot, a mug, and a little bowl, and they all are packable within each other. It's a little bit heavier, but for $15, you could sell me almost anything. For both the Weekend Warrior and the Ultralight Hiker, if you're just looking to go all in, $45, you can buy the Toaks Titanium 750 milliliter cup. This basically looks like one of those old aluminum Stanley ones. It's extremely light, but it only boils enough water for probably one person at a time, so just keep that in mind. For utensils and a mug, this is pretty universal, so for all three builds, you could focus on the Toaks Titanium Long Spoon is great. That fits into Mountain House bags. And then for a cup, I use the Sea to Summit collapsible cup. I don't know if that's actually the lightest or most efficient. Some people just use the pot that they cook and drink out of it. I personally really like to have my coffee separate from my breakfast, so to each their own. For cleanliness, soaps, towels, things like that, I would always recommend Dr. Bronner's Camp Suds. The travel size is just fine. It's only like $5 and you only need the tiniest little drop for it to start working. And then for the towel, you can get a packable towel like the Sea to Summit Pocket one. But honestly, I just go to Trader Joe's and get the microfiber dish towels and those work just fine. Okay, for water, very important topic. For a beginner, I would just go to your local grocery store and pick up a Nalgene. These carry about a liter of water and are only $15. They're almost indestructible. They have the thickest plastic I've ever seen, and they're completely clear, but much lighter than a metal water bottle. You do not need to keep your water cold on trail. It doesn't matter that much. For a Weekend Warrior or an ultralight hiker, you'll almost always see people out with smart water bottles. The reason for this is the water filtration systems that we use, and I'll get into a little bit more, are specifically threaded for that type of cap. So not only are you getting this extremely light plastic water bottle, but now I can use my water filter with it directly. So it's all convenience. So on that note, with water filters, you have a couple different options. As a beginner, I actually loved using a gravity filter. It just made the most sense to me when I was a beginner, so more user-friendly. Brand that we used and that I would probably recommend is the Katahdin. The Katahdin is basically just this hanging bag. It carries more than a liter of water, and you fill it up in a river and just let it drip from a tree or something like that. The only downside is if you're literally backpacking somewhere where there are no trees, then it's actually really hard to filter your water. You just have to stand there, which we have done before. And then for a Weekend Warrior ultralight hiker, absolutely the Sawyer Squeeze. I've since switched to the Sawyer Squeeze and I love it. It is much better if you're just providing for yourself. If you're providing for a number of people and you're splitting between them and you're sharing one filter, it really doesn't filter enough water at once because it only fits on a smart water bottle cap. But if everybody has a Sawyer Squeeze, that's the best scenario because now you all have the ability to filter your own water and drink directly from any area that you can. So I'm going to really quickly go over meals, but we're not going to go too in depth. For a beginner, I actually really recommend just going to get a traditional freeze-dried Mountain House meal. I wouldn't usually suggest this because they're actually more expensive, but the novelty of them is just so awesome. So try a true freeze-dried meal first. And then when you get into Weekend Warrior backpacking, ultralight backpacking, you can transfer to ramen from a grocery store or tortillas and olive oil because that's honestly what most thru hikers are eating, and peanut butter. And then for sanitation, this is really important, but doesn't need to be too complicated. For a beginner, just go ahead and grab the Coghlan's plastic trowel. It's $5. They sell it at Walmart, and it's literally just a very small plastic shovel for your poop kit. For a weekend warrior or an ultralight hiker, I might suggest the Deuce number 2. This is a very lightweight aluminum version of the trowel. So shaped pretty much exactly the same. It's a little shovel. And then for toilet paper, for a beginner, I would probably just suggest bring a couple squares, as many as you think you might need, and put them in a Ziploc baggie. For women or ultralight thru hikers in general, the Kula cloth is phenomenal. It's basically a pea cloth that allows the UV rays to disinfect the cloth as you hike. Another thing that I've heard, I've never tried, is the outdoor bidet. And you can actually just screw this as you would like on a smart water bottle and use it as a bidet. But I don't know about the functionality of that. I think some hikers really love it, and some people have just never heard of it before. So it might be something for you to test out. Navigation and safety. The first thing that I would check out is the AllTrails app. This is by no means sponsored, but it is a fantastic app. Basically allows you to track trails, kind of use it as like Strava, but specifically for off-grid trekking. It's great. And then the app Far Out allows for more long distance trails. You could basically pre-download a long distance hike, so you always have the map on hand. Both allow for comments, so you can actually check whether or not the weather, or if people are experiencing scrambling sections or fallen trees, those kinds of things will pop up on the app beforehand so you can plan. Then of course, it's always a good idea to have a traditional map. I personally wouldn't rely on just having your smartphone. In case your phone dies, you have something physical that you can actually address. I would also bring out a Garmin InReach Mini. These are pretty expensive, but they do provide a level of insurance. When you do need help, it's available to you and it's going to be accessible. Another way to stay safe on the trail is making sure that you have an itinerary, or at least text somebody an itinerary before you leave. I would just give them the trailhead and the time that you should be expected back. And then for a first aid kit, for a beginner backpacker, just go buy the pre-made medical kits they have at REI. They're around $25 and they come with pretty much everything that you need. Weekend warrior and ultralight, I would probably just fill up a Ziploc baggie with a couple of the essentials. You know that you don't need a lot in your first aid kit, so just throw in your band-aids and nail clippers and a couple other important things. For lighters and matches, I always bring one lighter for efficiency, and then I bring stormproof matches just in case I was in a pinch. Okay. No matter what kind of backpacker you are, hopefully you are able to find something that fits your exact needs or budget. I know for me, I mix and match all of these items together. I don't really fit in one particular category. My recommendation is use this as a loose guide when you go into REI and understand the different levels of backpacking equipment there are. This way you can enter REI just a little bit more informed and leave outfitted in exactly what suits your needs. So if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe if you really enjoy some of the content I've been making. With that being said, thank you so much for watching.